All right. The format for this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcements, a coffee and snack break, and our main speaker. Our first speaker tonight is Clemmie.
Hi, I'm Clemmie. I'm an alcoholic. In case you can't tell by the accent, I'm English, but I moved here about 3 years ago to get sober. And my goal here today is to share what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So what it was like growing up, I always felt that there was a part of me that was missing or wanted to escape what I was living in at the time that I was living in it. My whole world revolved around finding something, either from the youngest age, just getting out of my head. Whatever I could do to get out of my head, I would do, no matter what was going on. And that started very young, just with reading fantasy books. Really, really simple. Got me out of that. And then being English, my family always had booze around the house. So if I was ill or I wasn't going to bed, then it was a whiskey and milk or some Baileys and milk or a milkshake or whatever it was always there. Or I had a sore throat, then it was a hot toddy. That was the way that my family worked. And I didn't know anything other than. So that felt right to me. Ease the pain, physical manifestation of pain was good. And that led me to believe that everything could be solved through that manner. I went to boarding school when I was 11 and I absolutely hated it. It was an all-girls boarding school, and so any occasion I could get, I got suspended for drinking a whole bottle of dry gin when I was 12. Because that was the first thing that I saw in the kitchen cabinet, and I was like, this is enough. This has to be enough. And it continued that way, finding any substance that I could. And it went unnoticed by the family because I was 11 and I was in boarding school. Apart from the suspension, bit disappointed, weren't really there, so it was fine. What happened was I continued like that. And the physical manifestation of being an alcoholic and being unwell was I was deteriorating. As much as I loved sport and activities, I traveled. I went on my gap year, so cliche, I know. But I traveled around the world and I was drinking and drugging and doing all the things that I could because I felt like I was living the experience when in reality I was numbing myself to everything that was going on around me. And that was, looking back on it, that's really sad that I can't remember the people that I met, or I meet people now and they're like, hey, I met you before. And I'm like, I have no idea who you are. And I'm so sorry. And they'll be like, we had this really great, no idea. So that was the way that my life worked. And then I went to university and I had friends that really cared about me. And it got to a point where they were so scared for my well-being that they had an intervention. And that was the best thing to happen for me. Of course, I fought against it tooth and nail, screaming, shouting, doing the whole running away at the age of, 19, because I was like, this isn't the way that things should go, so I'm going to act like a toddler and run out of the house, whatever. But it was the best thing to happen to me. And they sent me to Arizona, to a treatment center, which I was like, I'm not listening to your rules. I don't care what you say. I'm not going to do anything that you want me to. You're trying to take away my lighter. Whatever it was, I was fighting against them consistently. Then COVID happened and I had to go home and I nearly died again. And that was the wake-up call that I needed, where I was like, I will get down on my hands and knees, not to see the despair and the sadness in my family's eyes about me, their daughter, who I hadn't seemed like myself in forever. So I went back to rehab. I was like, fine, I'll stop putting up such a fuss. I'll do the things you want me to. And I stayed out here. And I went to my first meetings in LA because I'd always wanted to move to LA. It was such a dream, living on the beach, all the amazing things. Not realizing that LA was the perfect place for me to be, because the sober community around here is amazing. And the women that I met were incredible and so welcoming. Me having travelled from England with a suitcase that literally just had tracksuits to Los Angeles, one of the most like fashionable, upkept places, and knowing literally no one, to having built an incredible community of women through working the steps and divulging myself of the things that are the most painful to talk about, because that was the only way that I got relief. And that's not to say that everything is perfect. That's not to say that everything's perfect. And I'm still struggling. You know, it's hard, but I've been able to make amends to my friends. I've been able to create distance from the people that I needed to. I've been able to do the things that I never thought I would be able to do because of my sponsor, who I can't look at in the eyes because I will cry more. Which happens every time I'm speaking, so I really need to learn not to look at her. But yeah, I built a life that I'd never expected, and if there's newcomers here, then you don't realize how much you're missing until you get to work the steps and you get to see all of the things that you felt hurt by before or betrayed or whatever, and you get to see your partner and be like, whoa, I can actually change the way that people respond to me because my actions are different now. Like I don't have unrealistic expectations on people, which means that I can just live my life, and if someone hurts me, then you go, okay, I see you for who you are or whatever, and if I continue to be friends with you, then I'm gonna get hurt. And you're able to set boundaries and do things that I never thought I'd be able to do. I'm still a people pleaser, and I will still, if I let my alcoholism take me away, I will act in the same behaviors I did before, and then end up getting hurt, and then be upset because I'll be like, well, I've got my higher power and all these things are happening. And that's not the way that it works. It's continuous effort and progress and time. And it's not going to be perfect. Lord knows it's not been perfect for me. And I doubt it ever will be. But I'm grateful that it's not perfect in the strangest way, because it shows me that I can't have that false sense of ego. That means that as soon as I do something right, everything's going to be right continuously. My ego would be like, yep, check, got that off the list, that's it. I can just keep doing that. Instead, it means I have to continuously look at the things which I've acted on before, I'm acting on now, how things around me work, and I get to place myself in a neutral spot of I'm not better than anyone, I'm not worse than anyone, I just am. And that's really beautiful, and it's something I couldn't have imagined 3 years ago. And I'm able to go back to England and sit with my friends at a pub and be completely fine, which is also something that I never thought possible. So, yeah, if you're contemplating why you're going to these meetings or anything about working the 12 steps, then I promise you there's nothing to lose but so much to gain. Because you get to understand yourself and the people around you and make amends to family, friends, all of that. And it's so worth it. Because you get to build something that's new and fresh, and the people in the rooms won't judge you for what you did or how you were or what happened in the past. They'll hold you to a standard, for sure. Because that's what working the 12 steps with a sponsor is. But also it's your choice if you want to do it or not. Eventually it's all down to you. And if you don't do what your sponsor says, it's your choice, but it's not really going to work. Or finding a higher power or having a spiritual experience. You've got to make the effort to make the difference. And yeah, that's all I really have to say. So thank you for letting me share.
Serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Now, our main speaker will share her experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Erin M. from Lomita.
Hi guys, my name is Erin and I'm an alcoholic. I came all the way from Lomita, so it's really been a journey. Oh my God, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I used to think it was so dumb and cheesy when people said that. I hated it. I love this program. I love the people in this room, and I'm so grateful. My sobriety is a product of millions and millions of people. They got me here. Millions and millions of people made Alcoholics Anonymous possible. They kept it safe. They kept it the way it is so that I could come in as an ungrateful, sniveling, bitchy 21-year-old brat and get sober. And by the grace of God, I'm sober 10 years. My sobriety date is March 27th, 2013. That's absolutely nuts to me. I think it's an absolute miracle. And I'm very aware today that it's only by the grace of God that I continue to be sober. And I rest on those laurels at my own peril, very real peril. And I just want to say from the start that this is a support group for dying people. It is not a fashion show. It is not a popularity contest. It is not a place where I can come here and try to impress you with how much I know about this book. My only goal today is to hopefully share with you the solution that has worked for me, and share with you some of the trials that I've gone through sober and how I've gotten through them and how I'm still here today. So, I was born in 1991 to a wonderful, loving family. And I had a really happy childhood. Our parents used to take us out on a sailboat called Old Reliant to the San Juan Islands, which are just off the coast of Seattle, and it's a magical place. It's beautiful. I had a blessed childhood, 2 parents who loved me, an older brother who showed me the ropes, and everything was great until I was 8 years old. And, it was beautiful, though, those 8 years. And then we moved to Bellevue, Washington. And Bellevue, Washington, a lot of rich kids there, different school, different attitudes. The kids wore cooler clothes. I didn't fit in. I was too much, too loud, too Erin. And I couldn't really seem to make friends or fit in. And that's when things started going downhill, And that's when my dad started drinking more. And that's when my mom started having to work more. Bigger house, more bills, more money, more work for mom. My mom's the breadwinner. And she started going on more long business trips. And my dad, I think he got lonely and he got sad and he started drinking more. And that's the first time my dad beat me. I was 8 years old. And I didn't understand. I was sure that if I behaved better, it wouldn't happen again. And I was terrified of him after that. But he'd always come back and say he was so sorry. And he said it would never happen again. And it would always happen again. And it was a cycle. It was an alcoholic cycle because we never talked about it. A lot of things like that would happen in our house, and we would not talk about them. And so I just got used to that. Things happen, you don't talk about it, you shove it down. There's a black box in your heart, and you shove all your uncomfortable feelings down there, and you keep them there. So I started that very young, and as I got older and older, I was going to school, and let me tell you how I was dealing with my feelings before I started drinking. Eating. I was a chubby little husky kid. Woo! Erin was a roly-poly girl, let me tell you. And I had warts all over my hands and super curly hair in an era when Avril Lavigne's stick straight hair was the coolest thing on earth. Yes, I'm aging myself. I'm 32. I'm aware of it, okay? I was not cool. I was chubby. I wore clothes from Limited 2 when everybody else was wearing Abercrombie and Fitch, okay? I was not giving boys head in the bathroom. I was reading a fantasy book by myself in the courtyard. I was a loser with a capital L, and I knew it. I was insecure, I was unhappy, I was afraid. That was middle school. I get into high school, and I'm still a super insecure, super unhappy kid with alcoholic behaviors, but no drinking yet. And the first time I drink is with my brother on a vacation in Mexico. And I realize how privileged that is, but that was my first experience with getting drunk. He took me out to a nightclub, and I had a bunch of tequila shots with him, and all of a sudden I felt what I've heard described in meetings as ittier, tittier, prettier, you know? I could dance, I was sexy, I wanted to be like Paris Hilton, and like that's super sad and tacky, but that's where I was at, okay? This is an alcoholics meeting, no judgment here, folks. I felt like Paris Hilton for the night, okay? And that was pretty cool for me. Did I start drinking every day after that? No, I filed that away as this takes away everything that makes me hate myself, and it makes me feel good. And I don't know who on earth would not want to do that again if they hated themselves as much as I did, and all they had to do was take a sip of a legal substance to heal their heart just for the night. Wow! Miracle. Everybody in this room gets it. My normie friends don't get it. They do not get it. And if you're sitting in this room and you're new and you get it, you're probably one of us. I'm sorry. Welcome to the club. Some of us even have jackets for that. So I filed that away. I go through high school. You know, I had like a promising high school career. I learned how to run cross country, so I got skinnier. I got hotter. I got more confident. I got really, really sick for a while. I got diagnosed with lupus, a chronic autoimmune disorder, which was life-changing, and I felt like helped me build a lot of character. You know, I thought I was really brave and really strong for going through that and coming out on the other side, and I was ready to go off to college and be a professional musician, and I wanted to sing for a living. So if I seem like a little obnoxious and animated up here, it's because I spent a lot of time performing in the past. And basically, I went off to college, and all of that fell apart within like 6 months. I immediately started drinking and using as often as I could. I was the only kid on my floor that like immediately bought a blender because I wanted to have margaritas every night. And I didn't understand why everybody didn't want to have margaritas every night with me. It just made perfect sense that like no parents. You know, people are willing to buy me vodka, and I was pissed that, like, I was drinking these margaritas alone, you know, so I went looking for upperclassmen boys, because they like to drink every night, and upperclassmen boys love younger women. It was a match made in heaven. So I immediately got a boyfriend who was older than me, who drank every night. Now I'm drinking and using, trying to keep up with the big boys, you know, because that's always been my thing is, don't look at me, I'm tough, I'm scary, look at how badass I am. I have a tattoo of a skull and a knife on my wrist, which is hilarious, that I got at 2 years sober, so we're still crazy in here after we get this. You know, so I was trying to keep up with the big boys, and like that didn't go super well because, you know, I ended up picking someone who was, surprised, pretty abusive because what did I grow up with, right? And so, you know, after a failed rape attempt at a formal in Vegas, I came back and I took a whole bottle of Xanax and tried to kill myself. And I landed in the psych ward. And guess what? When you're in a sorority, and sororities like their sparkling, picture-perfect, clean reputations, and you're the girl that's doing drugs and overdosing and nearly dying, they don't want you associated with them. And so I was pretty much like that chick on campus. Any people here in college, you know what I'm talking about, right? There's that girl. She knows. She's nodding her head. She's like, that was me too. Okay, I see you, girl. That girl, don't invite Erin to the party. She's crazy, you know? And so that was the year that I discovered I had mental health issues on top of my alcoholism, right? And so they're like, you've got to take your meds or you're going to be cuckoo bananas. And I was like, but the alcohol works faster, okay? So I kept drinking. I go back to school sophomore year, and I go into a really dark place where I basically don't leave my room for 6 months because I'd found other forms of alcohol that worked a lot more effectively, and I was doing those alone in my dorm room, and I would pretty much only leave to pick up delivery Chinese and then go back into my room, and then I wouldn't shower for weeks on end. really quickly, it got really bad for me. I was like a supernova of alcoholism and mental health problems. It was a beautiful thing to witness, you know? It was like exploding in midair. And I couldn't seem to see that I had a problem, so my parents pulled me out of school, put me in a treatment program for people with mental health problems that I had to go through for the rest of the fall of my sophomore year while all my friends had fun at college. And I still didn't think I had a problem, folks. I still thought I was fine. I went on my family's vacation with them that Christmas in Mexico. I got so wasted that I got kicked out of a club in Mexico. It takes a lot for that. Mexico's it's crazy down there, okay? People were applauding. My dad carried me out. It was not pretty. So that continued. I flunked out of another semester of school. I don't know how I got brought back in. Fast forward to the next year where I end up with someone who's also really abusive, doing a lot of drugs. It's like, this is not new. My story is not new. I am not special. I'm also not a badass. I'm not that cool. I basically did whatever drugs and substances that other people were doing so that I could fit in and be a part of so that people would like me. Because underneath whatever facade I was putting out at that time was a very sad, very lonely, very insecure little girl that just wanted someone I could completely rely on to give me a hug and be there and tell me everything would be okay. And I didn't have the tools to get there. So alcohol was not my problem, it was my solution, right? So after my second suicide attempt where I attempted to hang myself in my parents' bedroom and my brother found me before I could do it, I went to a second school. I thought, if I just go to a different school, I'll be fine. And if you ever want to get sober, going to school on Hollywood Boulevard is not a good idea. There's bars everywhere and guys with joints, and they can't wait to share some with the cute little blonde that's walking by. I'll give myself that much. I am cute. And so that didn't go well. I discovered a powdered form of alcohol that really had me hitting my knees, owing money to people a girl like me had no business owing money to. Getting into cars with strange people at all hours of the night to get what I needed to get and go where I needed to go. And it was really bad. It was really bad, and I wanted to stop. And I found out, to my surprise, that I couldn't. Has anyone ever gotten to that point where you realize, I'm terrified of what I will do to myself the next time I get fucked up, and you do it anyways? I was terrified of myself, man. It gives me the shakes just thinking about it. Because I would wake up on rooftops with people telling me, you were trying to jump. I'm a suicidal alcoholic. I don't know about you. I try to kill myself. I don't know why. God liked to make me that way, I guess. The thing is that fear, that terror of the drugs had stopped working, and every time I blacked out, I tried to end things, was the linchpin for me finally saying enough is enough, I need to get sober. And I'd been trying half-heartedly to go through some BS outpatient thing where they take you to meetings, and I was sitting in the back and being like, I'm an alcoholic, but was I really doing everything? Absolutely not. I would just sort of show up and be like, okay, I went to the meeting, okay, I guess I won't drink tonight then, and then I'd go home and drink and be mystified as to why it wasn't working. And I'll tell you, if you're someone here that is currently doing that or has done that, you probably know why it works, but I'll tell you, you have to do everything or it does not work. Everything the book suggests. Everything, or it won't work. So, I finally got to a place where I was like, I'm willing to do everything, and I was getting tested at this outpatient that I was going to while I was going to school in Hollywood. And I tested dirty, and my parents called me, and they're like, you need to come into a meeting with this outpatient place. And at that point, I was so delusional, I thought I could manipulate them to, keep me in LA and, still do what I wanted to do. And that was absolutely not what happened at the meeting. They're like, we know you've been drinking. We know you've been doing drugs. We need to send you somewhere to get better. And you can accept this offer, or we're kicking you out of the house, and you can officially become a crack whore. And I was like... And they were serious. They weren't kidding. They'd had enough of my BS. They'd had enough of me stealing their jewelry and pawning it to buy cocaine. They were over me. They were done. They'd already been through my brother, who continued to be an alcoholic to the age of 34, and only recently got sober. So they'd already pushed him out. They were done with me as well. So I said yes, if only so that I'd still have somewhere to sleep. I thought they'd keep me in LA, but no, I got shipped off all the way to Minnesota to a treatment center. And I'll be very clear with you, treatment centers do not keep you sober. At least not me. No amount of therapy is ever going to keep me sober. No amount of someone in a room doing a talk on self-esteem is ever going to keep me sober. The best thing my treatment center ever did to me is give me this book. It's called The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I still have notes from all the other girls that I went through treatment with in here. They gave me this book, they told me to read it, and they told me to find a sponsor as soon as possible. And they just emphasized that over and over and over again. And they gave me step worksheets and told me to write about stuff that was in the book. And that saved my life. So I went from that treatment center to another treatment center in Florida because that treatment center was only 30 days. And after me hanging out there for a little bit, I'm crazy now, but can you imagine me at like 10 days sober? They were like, this girl needs extra help. Extra. So they sent me to South Florida to a dual diagnosis treatment center, and I hated it. I hated it. I was really done with drinking, but I also wasn't, above complaining a whole lot, If you've ever had someone in your treatment center, any treatment center, ex-treatment center people here, that bitch who complained a lot, that was me. I sucked. I once moved a marble bench in my anger because they'd woken me up on the wrong day for blood tests. I absolutely sucked. I was fearful, I was selfish, I was self-centered, I was angry, but most of all, I was convinced that nobody could understand my special pain. Because within 30 days of sobriety, I'd also been diagnosed with hypothyroidism. So now I was walking around with my little bag of self-pity luggage on my back. You ever held your self-pity backpack and mentally loaded it up with all the things in your life that are so wrong and so hard? Oh, I'm an alcoholic. Oh, there goes another rock. I got bipolar. Oh, there's another rock. I've got lupus. Oh, and now the hypothyroidism. Oh, my life is so hard. You ever sit in the meeting and listen to someone talking like me and judge them and compare your scars and say, mine are so worse. That Erin would never understand my pain. It's so hard. So I was doing a lot of that in my first 6 months of sobriety, and I hadn't found a sponsor yet. And that's probably why I was doing a lot of that, because I didn't have anyone challenging my thinking. And so they were taking us to a lot of meetings, and I was sitting in the meetings, judging people, my pain, my this, my self-pity diaper, it feels so warm, sitting in my, feeling sorry for myself, because I gained 30 pounds, and don't you know how hard it is to not fit into your underwear? And so finally I went to a meeting, and some chick walked in and shared, and she basically said, I'm paraphrasing, that her dad had died 2 weeks ago, and that her sister had shot herself in the face and killed herself at a concert the week before, but that she was still going to the meeting, and she was sharing because her sponsor told her to. Her sponsor told her that you go to meetings no matter what. And that share changed my life, because I sat in that chair, and for some reason she reached me. That pain that she was in, she was crying, man, and that pain reached me. I said, this chick will be able to help me. I just knew, and she saved my life, My first sponsor, she saved my life. I followed her around like a frickin' baby chicken. Everywhere she went, I wanted to go. Everything she had, I wanted. Everything she told me to do, I did it. Call me every day, done. Read through the book, done. Do your 4-step? Okay, give me a month. I'd had a step 1 experience. If you want to know what a step 1 experience is, for me it's, I don't freaking know everything. I don't know everything. And mostly it's I don't know anything. That's how I feel these days. The more time I get, the more I'm I don't know anything. I need to run my stuff by everyone because I have no idea. The more I learn, the less I know. Step 2 for me was, are you willing to accept that something's out there is greater than you? For me, I had no issue with that. I knew I was the biggest POS in the universe, I knew that there were greater things than me. And I was honestly willing to lick the white dog poop in order to get into Alcoholics Anonymous. I was please, just someone help me. I don't want to die. That's how desperate I was. I was so scared. I would sit in my chair sometimes and grip the sides of the seat so that I wouldn't get up because I was I don't want to die. Somebody's going to help me here. And step 3, for me, coming to know my higher power was a lot of like getting on my knees and like saying the words and not feeling anything for a while. And simultaneously somehow managing not to drink, which I couldn't explain. I couldn't explain how I would hit my knees and I would pray morning and night and then I wouldn't drink. That didn't make any sense to me, And I used to go to this women's meeting. And there was this woman there that had like 15 years, and she would sit there and look so serene. And I envy those women that are like elegant and serene and like poised, and like I feel like I'm a duck, So she was like one of those, and I was like, how did you get there? Like your connection with your higher power. And like she told me, there's no secret. You just keep seeking. And I always think about that, like that's the secret for like step 3 is you just keep seeking, and over time it grows and grows and grows. And over our conversations, my sponsor had let me know that I had unrealistic expectations of people, places, and things. And what that truly means at its core is that I'm an emotional infant that wanders through the world, incorrectly assuming that people, places, and circumstances will suit themselves to my needs and do what I want them to do and be exactly how I want them to be. And then when I get disappointed, I throw a little hissy bitch fit and I spin around and I do all of my silly self-seeking behaviors. And she said, you need a higher power that's like a perfect person because you keep expecting people to be your higher power and they're never going to serve you. And I was like, damn. And so then I started imagining my higher power just as like a person who would hang out and talk to me. And maybe that sounds kind of crazy. Erin's got an imaginary friend. Well, fine, make fun of me. Joke's on you. I'm still sober. I don't care. It worked for me, and I would sit down and my higher power would walk and sit down next to me and I would talk to him about my day. He was a kid, like about my height. He had curly hair. He looked really friendly and like a Jewish comedian sort of way. I don't know how else to describe it. You know what I'm talking about. Just one of those friendly faces. And like, I'd tell him about my day, and this is all in my mind. And I'd be like, I'm having a hard time. I hate my halfway house. People are so mean. Like, am I going to die? Like, am I going to get this? I was all alone in Florida. I didn't know anybody. I had no money. They took my driver's license away. I was like, I'm doing this, man. Like, I hate myself. I'm lonely. I'm sad. And he would just say, I love you so much. Keep going. He'd say, I'm so proud of you. You're doing so well. Please don't give up. I'm right next to you. And I never heard voices like that in my head before. I don't know. The voices in my head were always mean. What about you guys? Did you have nice, warm voices that would come in your head and be like, you can do it? Like, that never happened for me. I just had a bunch of mean people in my head, and for once, I had someone nice there that was cheering me on, and I liked that. I would have died rather than admit it to anybody that I was having imaginary conversations with someone, but I liked it, so I kept doing it, and it worked, and I took my higher power with me everywhere I go. I got a job. My sponsor said, be self-supporting, stop living off of your parents like a selfish POS, get a job. So I took God with me into my job interview. She said, open the door, let God walk in. So I did. And he sat with me, and like I took my God everywhere. I'd work on my 4th step at the beach and write, oh yeah, I can't wait to write down all these horrible things people did to me. And then you get to the 4th column, right? And if you don't know, you write down all these resentments, and it's great. You're like, oh, Jessica wouldn't be friends with me in 7th grade, and I hate her forever. Or the more heavy ones, right? Where it's like, my dad beat me throughout my entire young adulthood. And I don't know how to deal with that, And then you get to go and look at your part in things, And for me, that was having realizations that, like, I used my anger towards the hurt that other people had done to me as a basis for my own wholesale condemnation. I told myself I deserved it, that was how I deserved to be loved. I hurt myself over that. I'd go out and abuse myself over them. I'd pick people that did the same thing that they did to me. So the 4th step taught me a lot about myself. And mostly it taught me that if anybody treated me the way I treated me, I'd kill them. If anybody treated me the way I treated me, I'd kill them, And that I had a lot of work to do. And that the way that I reacted to people, places, and situations was absolutely infantile. And it placed me at the center of the universe with everybody else on on concentric rings going around me, and it's the Erin show, and you're all just supporting actors. And that was how I realized I viewed the world. That I was the main character, and everybody else just existed to serve my needs. And so pulling out of that pain of writing that 4-step, we pulled basically a list of my character assets and my character defects, and I basically got the opportunity to work on them in my real life as they come up. So some days I'd pull a character defect and it wouldn't come up all day, and sometimes I'd pull one and I'd be like, oh God, it's patience. Because that comes up every day, all day, if you have a car and you drive anywhere, you know? And my sponsor used to say that your character defects will show up most strongly in the order that they will kill you. And so for me, I did a lot of work on my anger in my first couple years of sobriety. I was a very, very angry little girl. You know, I was a screamer, a shouter. I liked to throw plates and break things. And I wanted to scare people. You know, I wanted people to stay away so they couldn't hurt me, you know. And I went to therapy twice a week for my first 2 years of sobriety on top of calling my sponsor every day. I did the extra work because I wanted to feel extra better, you know. I had to learn how to communicate what my feelings were in a calm and understandable manner without throwing a fist, without breaking a plate, without reaching out and slapping someone, or without running out of the room and not even communicating at all. You know, I had to learn a lot of things. I grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was a baby when I got here. I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know how to get car insurance. I didn't know how to show up regularly at a job. I didn't know, and Alcoholics Anonymous taught me everything. My sponsor said, you've gotten a job, now get a commitment. I said, a commitment? She said, go to a meeting and ask for a commitment. So I did, and I was a greeter at the Thursday night young people's meeting at the Episcopalian Church in South Florida in Boca Raton, and I loved it. It was a cool meeting, and all the cool, hot young people were there, and I would show up in my coolest outfit and greet and give the boys extra long hugs. And I absolutely loved it. And what happened is I started to make friends in AA, you know. I knew that I didn't want to drink anymore and that I didn't want to die, and I was working through my steps, but I was also terrified. I was like, is this going to be any fun at all? Like, you know, is this going to be cool at all? And my sponsor was like so young and so cool and had all these cool young sober friends, and so she started inviting me out to like bonfires at Trent's house where we'd all play guitar and hang out and eat burgers. And I started going to like Sunday nights, the Grateful Dead cover band, where like we'd all go and dance for an hour, and then during the half-an-hour matinee, we'd go out on the beach at night and have like a little Wharf Rats, like sober Grateful Dead meeting for 30 minutes, and then go back in and dance some more. And I started like staying up all night on the beach and like having a movie marathon with a laptop, and South Florida's gorgeous, man. It was just like, it was absolutely incredible. And I started realizing that like I could have fun sober. At 6 months sober, I drove down to Fort Lauderdale with one of my best friends at the time, and we went down to see like basically a rock show, and I couldn't even stay for the whole thing. I didn't get to see the act that I went to see because I had a curfew at my halfway house. But we were driving home, and we had this loud rock music on, and the windows were rolled down, and I just remember thinking that like, it's fun being sober. It's actually really fun, and I'm having fun. And that absolutely pushed me through the rest of my steps. That's why it says you have to follow this path thoroughly. You know, like I had to do it all the way. If I hadn't done everything, I don't think it would have worked, because you need support when you're going through the steps, because it's painful. It's hard. Doing the steps was one of the hardest things I'd ever done in my whole life, you know, and I needed that support to get me through. So I get through my 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and I'm coming up on like a year sober now. And I'm doing my 8th and 9th steps. So I start making amends to people, you know, and I had to make a lot of amends to people for the crazy stuff that I did in my first year of sobriety, just in Florida, because I was nuts and I would go off on people. I held a house meeting once at my sober living because I was convinced that they were all conspiring against me, and I had like a list. I was not well, okay? I was that girl in my first year where people would like laugh at me when I shared, but it wasn't funny because I was so out of it. I was like that girl, they're like, she's not gonna make it. Like, not gonna make it. But the thing that I did right is I did everything my sponsor told me to do, and I did everything that it says to do in the book, and I pursued that doggedly. I did exactly what I needed to every single day. And getting to make amends to my family was really interesting because I was introduced to the concept of living amends. So living amends is not when you just go up to someone and like let them know how much you regret what you did and how you can make it right, and then you make it right. It's for all of your life, your goal is to now be of maximum service to this person to repair the damage that you've done. And so the amends to my parents have been something that has evolved over the course of my lifetime. It started with like very simple things like making sure to clean up after myself when I was a guest in their home, or cooking them breakfast, or making the bed, or offering to clean the floors for them. Or when they moved out here, I was out there every single weekend helping them move boxes and put up artwork and get everything undone. Or it was calling my mom to check in on her when she got depression during COVID. Or, it's calling my dad to like ask how he's doing with his chemo because I know he won't tell me. It's the little things like that that have built up over time to where, my dad didn't even want to see me for like the first year of my sobriety, and I didn't want to see him, and I did not think I'd ever be close with him. And like today, my parents are two of my closest friends, and I've gotten the opportunity to make amends to my brother, where he was really ill with alcoholism. And you can imagine what it's like to have an active alcoholic family member at all of your gatherings. I'm sure for some of you that's currently your reality. It's difficult. And I treated him with contempt, with a lack of compassion, and with a little self-righteous indignation. That's my favorite character defect. And so I got to make amends to him for that. And I'm continuing to make amends to him for that. And trying to be of service to him and his wife, who've been through hell and back because of this disease. And one of the greatest blessings in my life is that I started making that amends to him about a year before he got sober because of sponsor direction. And I didn't want to do it, but I did it. I would drive out to his house on Sundays, and I would cook dinner for him and his wife. And I'd buy all the groceries, I'd cook, I'd clean up, and then I'd go home. And it was hard because he was drinking and using, and it was hard to see him like that. But I did it. And I really just thought I was getting some time with him before he died. I didn't think he was ever going to get sober. I thought at least I'll have this time with him because I made the effort. And when he finally wanted to get sober, I was the person that he called. And I got to take him to a meeting at the South Bay Alano Club and introduce him to people. And he's 2 years sober now. And my family is whole because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I continue to underestimate this program and the straight up like magical healing that is present here, and that continues to happen every day, And the 10th step for me is a step that I neglected to my peril. I ceased to do inventories and check-ins with a sponsor, because I stopped having a sponsor. Because at around 3 years sober, I moved from Florida to California, and I started going to meetings, and I had an experience with someone in AA, and I took it too personally because I wasn't well, and the other person wasn't well, and I decided, based on my interaction with one person in Alcoholics Anonymous, that the whole program was no longer for me. And that is how alcoholism works hand in hand with my ego to try to kill me. And I almost let it win, I left the program, and it's that little voice in your head that's like, I'm fine. I don't need to go to the meeting tonight. That is exactly how it starts, And I had this resentment, and did I go and talk to someone about it? Did I do a 10th step? Absolutely not. No, I let it fester, and then I fed it, and then I wrote a sad poem about it and put it on my wall, you know what I mean? And like for me, what happens when I have an untreated resentment? Out comes the self-pity diaper. And I might be going to meetings, but I'm sitting there thinking, you don't understand me, you don't understand my pain, and I'm all alone, and that's right where your alcoholism likes to keep you, is alone with your special pain. And so I was dry for 2 years. I didn't come back until I had nearly 5 years sober. What that looked like for me was I'd gone back to treating my alcoholism with food again. So I was roly-poly Erin. I was like 75 pounds overweight. I hated myself. I'd lost my job, and I was working at Trader Joe's as a checkout person. I was lonely. I cried myself to sleep most nights. I didn't have very many friends, and I spent my weekends indoors playing video games all day with like Domino's pizza boxes piling up next to me. My alcoholism is not sexy, guys. I really wish it was, but it's not cute. And I was a dry drunk. And finally, my roommate came in and she was like, if you don't go to a meeting tonight and get a sponsor, I'll kick you out. I'll call your parents and kick you out. And she's like a tough love. She had 5 years sober at this point. Elise was not messing around. So, I took off my self-pity diaper long enough to get in the car, and I went to a Pacific group meeting, and I basically barfed all over the meeting. It was one of those meetings where they'll pick someone to share for 3 minutes or so before the main speaker comes up, and they picked me, and I was like, you don't want to pick me. And they're like, yeah, we want to pick you. You look like you're new. I felt so embarrassed, but it was the embarrassment and the ego deflation of feeling like I was coming back into the rooms at 5 years sober and feeling like a complete newcomer and like an absolute mess and just embarrassed and ashamed of myself that I hadn't taken a cake in 2 years or paid forward any of the blessings that Alcoholics Anonymous had given me. And a lot of people I've heard since then usually go out and die because of that. And I don't know. That's why I'm the product of millions of people who helped save my life. Elise is another angel that I can add to my list, who I can never repay for all the help they've given me, And so I go back into the rooms. I start working the steps again. Basically what happens is a peeling of another layer off of the onion. I'm sort of playing with the timeline here, but it doesn't really matter. When I came into the rooms again, I was so self-conscious and so self-hating that I felt exactly like I was a newcomer again. I couldn't raise my hand. I couldn't share. I felt like everybody would find out and they wouldn't like me. And, I felt like the women, particularly in the program, would judge me and think I was a bad AA'er. But what I found out instead is that the people who were meant to be in my life, God put there and kept there, And I've had so many women in Alcoholics Anonymous reach out their hands to me and pick me up for meetings and invite me to women's meetings and invite me to fellowship and just put up with me when I'm not well, that I can never repay them for that, And basically at around the time I was finishing my steps, I got a new sponsee. So it's time to talk about the 12th step, right? My favorite step. And I'm totally going to cry again, and I'm not going to apologize for it, because watching the light come on in someone else's eyes is the single most magical experience you'll ever have. It's incredible, I used to think that a lot of bad things happened to me in life, that I had a lot of scars, that I had a lot of burdens, that I had a lot of weights to carry. And God sends me women who need help with those things. God sends me women who are mentally ill and need to go to the psych ward to get their meds adjusted, and they're scared, and I get to tell them, it's okay, just bring an apple, the food there's crap, don't get constipated. I get to help them out with that. I get to share at meetings that I have lupus and have other women come up to me and say, I thought I was alone. I was feeling special and not going to meetings. Thank God I'm not the only person. God gave me all these blessings so that I could tell people they're not alone. And I get to do that with my sponsees, and it's so special. I'm so grateful that all of my pain has a place where it can be useful. All my mistakes, don't do what I did. I do that with my sponsees a lot, because the only thing I've done correctly is not drink and used in these past 10 years. I've gotten fired from jobs twice for showing up late in my first 5 years of sobriety. Absolutely. So I tell people, don't do what I did. Get up and go to your job. It's that simple. Why did it take me so long to figure it out? Because some are sicker than others, and I am present. And I had a sponsee come into my life at a time when I really, really needed one, and I didn't even have a sponsor. But I can tell you the magic of sponsees is pretty simple. It works with your ego. So if I'm telling my sponsees to go and do all this stuff, go to meetings, call me, et cetera, that means I have to do that too. Because I I can't tell Clemmie to go to women's meetings and connect with other women if I'm not doing that too. It absolutely saves my life because my ego wants me to be the best sponsor ever. But in order to do that, I have to take my own stupid advice. Oh my God, sometimes it's horrible. I'm like, I don't want to go to this meeting. But every time I go, I'm glad I went, And sponsorship has absolutely been life-saving for me. Everyone who has ever sponsored me has completely changed my life and saved my sobriety in ways that they may never know. My first sponsor used to take my calls at like midnight when I'd wake up from like night terrors, and I didn't have anyone to call because my parents didn't want to hear from me, so I'd call her and she would listen, and she would say everything's going to be all right, and that's the kind of sponsor that I've always striven to be with my sponsees, is just somebody who's kind. And the book talks about good sponsorship in here. It's really quite awesome. It basically talks about how there's no axes to grind, no fees to pay, no lectures to be endured, no spiritual hilltop that I'm speaking down to you from. It's just, hey, let's walk side by side on this path together. Let's walk along together. Let's grow together. And hey, I'm not perfect. I'm just a human just like you, And I absolutely love that. And the bonds that I have gotten to create in this program have been absolutely mind-blowing and so rewarding. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the benefits of staying sober. I have done everything fun that you could possibly imagine sober. I've gone skydiving. I did that last year. I've been to Burning Man twice with a huge camp of sober people. If you ever want to come with, let me know. 530 in G, Anonymous Village. I get to go clubbing sober. I've gone to music festivals sober. I make my own outfits, and I go with my friends, and we take pictures, and it's incredible, and I don't feel the need to drink and use. I can go clubbing. I can go to concerts. I traveled to Europe with my partner and the love of my life. The year before last year, we went to Spain for like a week and a half. This year, I paid for our trip to Seattle. That's right. Your girl is self-supporting. That's crazy, And for the most part, I get up in the morning and I look in the mirror and I think, she's okay. I like her, I don't have secrets and embarrassments and all of the weight of all of this stuff piled on top of me that oh my God, I just can't take a look at that. And if it starts to pile up, I know what to do. I give someone a call. I pick up a paper and a piece of paper and a pen, And, I get to hang out with my family and actually enjoy spending time with my family. One of my dreams is coming true next weekend, you guys. I'm inviting my parents to come stay at my and my partner's townhome because we have a guest bedroom for them to stay in. And I can't tell you what that means to me, to be able to have my parents come and stay and have me take care of them for once. Because they spent so much time and money taking care of me and cleaning up my messes. And it's going to be amazing. And, I've built a career for myself out of basically nothing. I was working all of these odd jobs. Like I said, I'd flunked out of a couple schools, so I started working as a receptionist, and they had me do social media. And I was good at doing the artwork that went along with it, and I was good at the writing. So I ended up continuing to pursue that, and now I work with Adobe as basically they're one of their brand managers for their social media, which is absolutely insane. Like, looking back, like if you told me 11 years ago that on a Saturday night I'd be happy to be at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, I would have slapped you, How did I get from there to here? I just did what people told me to do. I'm not special. I don't have like some crazy magic ability. Like, read the book and do what your sponsor tells you to do. And don't do it like it's a joke. Do it like your life depends on it, because it does, I was just speaking with someone last weekend who her baby daddy, the father of these two children that I got close with, he's dead. And, they're never going to see their father again. Like, this disease takes lives. And if you're not taking care of yourself, then it will take you out. I've seen it happen time and again. So I personally have experimented with every single way that I could do as little as possible in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm outing myself. I'm lazy, you know? And I have found, to my ultimate dismay, that I'm really not exempt from doing any of the work here. I actually have to do all of it. And the amount of work that I put into my program is directly proportional to the amount of peace, joy, and serenity that I have in my life. You know, and I know that now. I know that if I stop going to meetings for a couple weeks, I stop calling my sponsor, I stop returning sponsees' calls, that I'm going to get slowly and steadily crazier, for lack of a better word, you know, and the life that I enjoy is so wonderful and so simple and so peaceful, you know. Here was my day-to-day, you guys. I woke up with my boyfriend, we had coffee, and he's this wonderful, incredible man who's speaking at another meeting tonight. He's so awesome. And we went for a long-distance run together. So that means we ran together for 3 seconds because he's very fast, and then he passed me. And then after that, we came back home, and I got ready to come to this meeting, you know, and it was a good day. It was a really good day. And every single morning that I get to wake up sober is absolutely a blessing beyond belief. And I just want to restate again and finish out with, I'm incredibly grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous and for everything that the people in Alcoholics Anonymous have done for me. And I hope that if you're new, if you came to scoff, that you may remain to pray. Thanks for letting me share.